Good morning, my name is Eric Olson, the Lieutenant Commander of the Alaska Department of Public Safety Aircraft Section. As part of the Commander of the Aircraft Section, I oversee our employees as well as our aircraft operations, maintenance, and so forth. We have a total of 43 aircraft. The variety goes from small aircraft such as behind me is a Piper Super Cub, all the way up to a twin-engine turbine King Air. Out of the 43 aircraft, we have 5 helicopters. We have 3 Robinson R-44. We have 2 A-Star H-125. We also have 23 Super Cubs. We have Cessna 182, 172, 185, Cessna 206. All of these aircraft are absolutely critical to the missions that Alaska Wildlife Troopers and Alaska State Troopers use on a daily basis. Our span of coverage for our operations is the entire state of Alaska. At times, our King Air aircraft even conducts dignitary missions all the way down to the lower 48. So we have a large area that we have to patrol, provide resources to our citizens of Alaska, as well as our employees and other employees of different divisions within the state of Alaska. With our aircraft, the pilots who operate consist of Alaska State Troopers as well as civilians. Majority of our pilots are Alaska State Troopers, and the smaller section would consist of our civilians, which are mostly all military, prior military pilots. As far as how we operate our aircraft, we are Alaska State Troopers first. That's our primary mission. However, we use tools such as the aircraft that you see behind me. The aircraft are utilized such as for cargo transportation, transporting prisoners, transporting state troopers to different areas across the state to conduct their investigations, such as crime scenes, gathering evidence, conducting interviews. We also conduct a large amount of search and rescues with our aircraft.
MACOM 536, I'm 1023 request report.
So depending on the type of environment, location within Alaska, the time of year, the terrain, you could either be using a Super Cub or you could be using a A-Star helicopter aircraft. As far as becoming a department pilot, the first thing a person needs to do is to apply to be an Alaska State Trooper. Once they complete 1 year of probation, then they can fill an application that goes up through the chain of command. Once it's been signed off by the division director, they give us authorization to move forward with the training process. That consists of one of our CFIs, Certified Flight Instructor, meeting with the pilot applicant. They go over their past history. Majority of our pilots, we require Alaska time. Depending on the type of airframe they may be operating, it may be as low as 25 hours of Alaska time or all the way up to over 500. Some of the ratings you have to have can start off as a pilot with no air certificate, such as a private pilot. It could be a straight up zero-time pilot who hasn't received any training, or it could be restricted to the applicant has to have an airline transport pilot with multi-engine ratings and or CFI ratings. So the gamut is quite large, and so depending on the airframe that they're going to operate will depend on what the minimums are. However, whether the pilot has no experience or has some experience or has a whole lot of experience, our CFIs will do an assessment with that pilot, determine what kind of ground school instruction they need as well as flight instruction. Once they commence with those operations, the final task is for the pilot to pass a check ride. Once that is completed, then they're officially a department pilot. We take great pride in our pilots. We have 39 pilots across the state of Alaska who operate the aircraft that I just spoke about. They're stationed all over Alaska. Majority of our civilian pilots are in major areas such as Bethel, Anchorage, Fairbanks, or Nome, or even Kotzebue, whereas our state trooper pilots, they are also spread out in the same areas. However, they even go even more remote to villages and locations across Alaska. As far as our pilots bidding for a position and getting assigned, they're trained in the major areas such as Anchorage primarily. However, we do flight training in Palmer, Soldotna, and Fairbanks area. But once a pilot position is put out for bid by our pilots, usually it's done by seniority, and it's also taken account by the division director. They make the final determination in consultation with human resources where a pilot's going to be assigned. But having a experience is definitely helpful, such as having multiple ratings, having a lot of Alaska flight time, being a long-term law enforcement officer will really help that pilot get the necessary information to the director so they can make a good decision who the best pilot may be to assign to that area. The pilots also, for the Alaska State Troopers under the PSEA contract, which is Public Safety Employees Association, receive a 5% premium pay as part of their union bargaining agreement. And so that's very helpful because it essentially recognizes the skills that you are able to perform as an Alaska State Trooper here with the Department of Public Safety or as an Alaska Wildlife Trooper. No matter what, though, being an Alaska State Trooper pilot is one of the best things I've ever done for my career. Myself, I was stationed up in the Arctic areas of Alaska, above the Arctic Circle, as well as interior Alaska. I flew single and twin engine aircraft, and the experiences I had with that was almost beyond what you can logically think of. You're able to help people who are at their worst. You're conducting search and rescues, saving people. Thirdly, keeping people from dying is a great gratification. Helping those who need medical help, those who have experienced the worst crime of their entire life, and you need to transport them to a certain location to receive help, such as medical service or counseling, and or to be part of the criminal investigation to make sure that the perpetrator is held accountable for their crimes. There's a large variety of different things I've experienced as an Alaska State Trooper pilot, which made it one of the most gratifying times in my entire career, something I'll always cherish. And now being part of the aircraft section, I can help pilots that we already have on board, future pilots that will come on with our department. There will always be a need for department pilots, whether civilian or law enforcement officers for our department. So we are looking, we are recruiting, and we are asking those who are interested to be part of the best law enforcement agency in the entire United States, which is Alaska State Troopers Department of Public Safety.
Hi, my name is Zach Johnson. I've been a trooper for about 6 years now. I currently serve as a tactical flight officer assigned to the aircraft section down in Anchorage. In that role, it's my job when the helicopter goes up on a mission to operate the mission equipment and the radios to serve as the interface between the aircraft and the troopers on the ground. It's a really exciting and challenging role. We get called to respond to a whole broad range of missions. We do a lot of search and rescue stuff here. We go do counter-narcotic operations with other trooper units. We will go out and assist patrol. Really runs a wide gamut of stuff, and it's exciting, dynamic, and you never really know where you're going to get from day to day. It's also a very satisfying mission because of the variety of roles we serve in. One day we might go up and we might be helping to track a fleeing suspect running through the woods and talking in the troopers on the ground so they can successfully apprehend him. The next day we might go out and we might find somebody's loved one who is lost in the woods, and we might bring them back into town and to safety and have a nice happy ending there. So it's an exciting, really dynamic role. Before that, I was a pilot assigned to the rural unit in Fairbanks. There I was one of 5 troopers, including a sergeant, who were responsible for covering about 24 rural villages spread out over an area roughly the size of the state of Washington. The nature of the job was when a call would come in from one of these communities, it would come to myself, one of the other troopers unit. We'd get some basic information, and then if we decided it was something we needed to respond to, I'd have to go do stuff like check the weather, figure out what kind of resources we need to do it. And then ultimately, once we had a plan that was actionable, we had a Cessna 206, a little 6-seat aircraft that we'd utilize. We'd go out, we'd fly to the village, we'd land, we'd go make contact with locals in the community. We'd really try to leverage the local resources there, working with community leaders, healthcare providers, a whole range of folks within these communities to try and help figure out a plan of action to address whatever the situation was, be it locating the suspect or interviewing witnesses. If somebody needed some assistance, figuring out what that is, and then once we successfully completed that part of the job and the investigation, we'd load back up in the aircraft and we'd fly back to Fairbanks. It's a beautiful state, and it was an incredible way to see a huge, vast range of territory. just to get to the call before you even really start the heavy lifting, we'd be flying over mountains, rivers, herds of caribous, all sorts of incredible scenery. It was just an amazing way to get around, an amazing way to see this incredible place, and a very satisfying job that included a lot of really significant challenges. Certainly being a pilot in Alaska is a pretty big responsibility. On top of that, being a trooper is also a lot of responsibility, and really figuring out how to balance and be safe in both those roles was difficult, but also immensely satisfying. So something that I really loved and really felt passionate about doing that kind of work.